It is the beginning of a new presidential administration. A huge turnover of executive branch personnel is taking place. People who worked for the last president have cleaned out their desks and departed. And some of the new people coming into those offices are from research organizations, so-called think tanks in Washington. Indeed, there is a back-and-forth relationship in the U.S. Capitol between government and think tanks. Just as a new administration draws from the ranks of researchers, those organizations also take in those who carried out policy for the last president. Former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations John Bolton has seen both sides of that street. After holding positions in the administrations of President Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush in the 1980s and early 1990s, he then went to the research organization American Enterprise Institute as a senior vice president. When George W. Bush took office in 2001, Bolton came back to government as Undersecretary of State and then as ambassador. At the end of the Bush administration, he went back to AEI as a senior fellow. Similarly, former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger is with another Washington research organization, the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Also at CSIS is former ambassador to the UN and to Afghanistan, Zalmay Khalilzad. Similar examples can be found in other Washington think tanks. Ambassador Bolton says this is a normal and logical aspect of the Washington policy process.
So for people like myself who have the luxury to come back to a research institute, it is a way to recharge our batteries intellectually. It's a way to think about policy without having to have the day-to-day responsibility of making it or recommending it or discussing it in the governmental context. And I think from the point of view of the overall effectiveness of the American government, that's a very, very important contribution that the think tanks make.
At the Center for American Progress, Chief Operating Officer Neera Tandon says being out of power actually caused her research organization to be created.
Under First Lady Hillary Rodham Clinton, I was one of her domestic policy advisors. When she decided to run for Senate, I worked for her then. But then, when we came out of power, we recognized, Hillary recognized, John Podesta recognized, President Clinton recognized, there was no organization that worked across issues to really move the debate over the long term in a more progressive direction. So it's one of the reasons why I helped start with John Podesta, the Center for American Progress.
While many Washington research organizations have a number of people who served in previous presidential administrations, Jeffrey Hyde says the so-called revolving door is smaller and slower at the Rand Corporation.
In the last change of administration, we may have lost a half a dozen researchers to the Obama administration. We may have picked up a handful from the Bush administration. But bearing in mind, we have close to 900 researchers. We're a quite large organization.
Creating and carrying out policy is a core function of government. The policy process is complicated, requiring highly experienced people who know in detail what needs to be in place. And because of that, research organizations, think tanks, have been and will be an important, even essential part of that endeavor. Jeffrey Young, VOA News.